Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the summer series. My name is Andrew Valanis, and I'm the Executive Director of the Montana Renewable Energy Association. Before we begin, I want to just give you a quick word about MREA. We are a nonprofit organization, membership-based. We work across the state to educate and advocate for renewable energy, and there is a whole lot of information about MREA on our website, which is montanarenewables.org. I'd also like to give a shout out to our sponsors, to Clearwater Credit Union, Kaufman Engineers, the Montana Department of Environmental Quality, On-Site Energy, Aero, and Ford Montana Foundation. And I am extremely excited to have our two special guests with us today. We have Rachel Dodgen and Melissa Sladek from our national parks, from Glacier and from Yellowstone. And they'll be speaking to us today a little bit about their work in the parks and how our parks are using renewable energy and other interesting efficiency and sustainability programs. So without further ado, first up from Yellowstone National Park is Rachel Dodgen, their sustainability intern, and I'm going to turn off my screen and pass things over to Rachel.
All right. So, hello everybody. My name's Rachel. As you said, I'm a sustainability intern here, and I'm going to talk to you about renewable energy in the park. This is Grand. Can everybody see the screen? Thumbs up. Cool. So this is Grand Geyser. If you haven't seen it go off, it's way better than Old Faithful. So just throwing that out there. So most of what I'm going to be talking about today is the Lamar Buffalo Ranch, which is located in Lamar Valley in the northeastern part of the park. So this is kind of like our sustainability hub / education hub here in Yellowstone. So a little bit of history about the ranch. It was established in 1907 to bring back the American bison population. So the government bought about 23 bison and relocated them to the park, bought them from a local ranch, and we managed the herd until about the 1950s. And now we have over 4,000 bison in the park. So it was very successful. And now we use it as an education center for Expedition Yellowstone. So during this whole time, the ranch is completely off grid. There's no electricity wires or anything running out there. It's way out in the middle of the park. So it was just running off of generators. Until 1996, we installed a 7 kilowatt system, which were just 2 of these 4 panels that you see here. And then we doubled it in 2005 to a 14 kilowatt system. So before that, like I said, it was just generators, and it was actually like a diesel generator, and my supervisor lived out there during that time, and it was like a big, like windy thing that you had to start up, and in the winter time, it wouldn't always work. So they had a lot of issues with it. So luckily they were able to get some solar out there and get some real electricity going, and work ourselves off of fossil fuel. There also were not any vault or any bathhouses at the time. It was only vault toilets. So it was like really remote, really rural, low-key area until 1996. And then in 2005, we doubled it, but some issues. There weren't any meters for the system or monitoring. And then by about 2010, the batteries really kind of reached the end of their life. So the backup generator was being kicked on more and more, especially with an increase with education programs around that time as well, which also operate in the winter time. So schools will come out to the ranch and stay in these cabins. So it was using a lot of propane, which is not good. So then in 2014, we completely replaced the system with this brand new 42 kilowatt system. And all of these panels were donated by Sharp. And then a bunch of other partners as well helped us with batteries and inverters and designing the system. Had some schools help out as well. But we've actually had a lot of issues with this system. And this mostly has to do with our battery storage. So Toyota donated 208 used Camry hybrid nickel metal hydride batteries as a way to experiment with how they can reuse their batteries from cars that they are getting rid of or whatever. So, but because they were nickel metal hydride, there actually wasn't any type of inverter that worked for these batteries along with the solar panels. So they had to, they partnered with Indie and created a custom inverter, which we at the park were not necessarily aware of all the complications of this. And they actually needed like special satellite communication to be able to control this system remotely. And because it's a remote area and we were relying on the solar panels to power the satellite to communicate with our remote control, it never really worked. So it was a lot of problems for about 3 years. We never really got it to work. And unfortunately, like the generator kept coming on and off because the batteries weren't communicating correctly. So the starter on the generator broke. And then because the batteries were never being charged correctly, they eventually dropped down to where they would never turn back on. So unfortunately, we had to let this system go. But it was a lot of lessons learned. It was a really cool like pilot study. It would have been great if they had tried it not in a super remote location where you know, they could have tested it in a better place where they weren't relying on the system itself to power the satellite or the communication for IT. So unfortunately, we just had to go with new batteries. So we just went with a lead acid battery storage. So we just went with something that we knew was gonna work, because after 3 years of complication and using way more fossil fuel than we wanted, we were just like, let's just go with what we know. So this is what we have now, is our lead acid batteries. We also got new charge controllers and a new generator at the same time, and that was in 2017. And then also at the Lamar Buffalo Ranch, we have a micro hydro system. So we installed this to help supplement the solar in the winter. So Lamar Valley gets a lot of snow. So our solar panels get covered up pretty easily. We have a lot of overcast days. So this is to kind of help out and supplement that system. So here you can see the design, and it comes from Rose Creek, which is right behind the campus. And because Lamar Buffalo Ranch is all in a historic district, it kind of causes all these complications with where you can put a new building, and can you pull, dig up the ground to put in a pipe? Can we build something here? So originally we were going to put it in one place, and then we had to move it to another place. So it's just like a lot of little details that really come into play when working with the National Park Service and these unique locations. And really the only way we could get a micro hydro out here is because we already had a pipeline in place for domestic water for the campus. So there's rules out there now with protecting the resources, and you're not allowed to take water away from the natural environment. So that's the only way we could install this microhydro, is because we already had pipeline there. So yeah, so here's inside the building. So that's the building on the bottom right there. And the turbine on the left. So it's a 4.5 kilowatt system, a Pelton wheel. And then this middle picture here is where we dump any extra electricity produced in these heaters. So in the summertime, like right now, we have over 12 hours of sunlight. So the solar panels are able to produce all the energy we need, but the water never stops flowing. So we just had to install these heaters so we can dump that extra energy without over doing it to the batteries. We still have some complications with these systems. Everything's just a little overcomplicated just from the beginning with the batteries, with the Camry batteries, because we wanted to keep it so that way if Toyota did want to come back and try to restart the system, we have all these different switches. And the way we were originally going to design it, we decided to keep that microhydro as AC power, when really we should have just kept it as DC. So it goes from AC to DC for the batteries and then back to AC to power the buildings. So it's just a lot of complications there and a lot of lessons learned. If we wanted to try to do something like this again in the future, we really are going to go for a more simple design, something that's a little easier to manage, where we don't have to have people from other companies come in and assist, where we can have somebody who's an expert at the park. And then also at the campus, we are constantly trying to improve the buildings. So there's about 20 buildings on the campus. Most of them are little cabins. This specifically is the Buffalo Keeper's House, which is one of the first buildings built in the early 1900s, I believe around 1910. So again, it's a historic house, so have to go through all of these rules and regulations to get it fixed. But we've installed spray foam on the walls, we redid the roof, we added a porch, while also still being able to keep the historic significance of the house and maintain the historic materials, which is really important. Excuse me. So that's still something that's going on. We're still improving to this day. And here's a little drawing of our overview. So you can see the solar panels and the microhydro both feed into the control, which feeds the batteries, which goes through the inverter to feed the campus. And we do have a website here that is run by Montana State University, but they're in the process of updating it right now. So it's down at the time, but hopefully you're able to try it in the future. And there's like, all of this is interactive. So you can click on the panels and it'll tell you about it. You can click on all the different buildings and it'll tell you about them. So yeah, that's like our main hub. And then a couple other systems we have around the park. We have a microhydro system in Mammoth, which was installed in 2018, again, as a part of the already domestic line. So able to use that to create the system. So it powers about 100 homes annually and offsets about 670 tons of CO2 a year. And then of course, we also have our concessioners, Xanterra and Delaware North, which do a lot for the park in terms of sustainability. They have a little bit more wiggle room when it comes to funding and stuff like that. It's a little bit easier for them to do these projects. So Xanterra has these two solar systems on the right here. So that's one of their dorms at the top. That's a 25 kilowatt system. And then the two houses on the bottom are actually located in Gardner, also for employee housing. and they were the first 2 LEED houses in the park. And then Delaware North, who runs all of our general stores throughout the park, they have a certified green fleet, and then they're also a certified zero waste company. So they're able to divert 97% of their waste, which is awesome. So yeah, I kind of ran through that real quick, but that's pretty much it for me. Thanks for having me, and I'll look forward to your questions later.
Great, thank you, Rachel. Yeah, I think we'll do questions maybe at the end, but this is a good spot for a reminder. If anyone does have questions, you can go ahead and submit them at any time. Rachel, if you would maybe stop sharing your screen, and then I'm going to ask Melissa to unmute herself.
Hear me?
Yep, and this is Melissa Sladek with Glacier National Park. Melissa is a science communications specialist, and yeah, thank you so much for joining us. I'll let you take it from here.
Thank you. Yes, I am going to share my screen, but I just work here in the Crown of the Continent Research Learning Center, which is a part of Glacier National Park's staff, but there are about 18 research learning centers throughout the National Park Service, and so we are out of Glacier, and so we do a lot of sharing research and science within the Crown of the Continent ecosystem. And also we host the sustainability coordinator and the green team out of our office. And Jeremiah Eaton was our sustainability coordinator this past year. He was amazing, and he was put this presentation together, but he unfortunately for us had to leave to go back to grad school, and so I'll be doing the presentation today. But I have been on the green team at the park for about 10 years, so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of the material that Jeremiah put together today. So I'm excited to share that with you. Okay, are you all seeing my screen?
Yep, it looks great.
Great. So today I'm focusing on the renewable energy in Glacier National Park, of course, but you know, we're not focusing on all the other things we do as far as non-renewable in terms of conserving and trying to basically reduce our carbon footprint in the first place. But I am going to focus on some of we're going to highlight a little bit. Here's our overview of both solar and hydroelectric that's going on in the park, and then how what we need to do to kind of keep moving forward. So we'll look at first, we're going to start with solar and talk a little bit about where we have solar panels. We have quite a few places where there are solar panels in effect, and visitor centers are a big attraction, kind of where we get a lot of attention for them. But there's also ranger stations that use them, as well as fire lookouts, and then all of our radio communications as well, because if you think about it, you know, most of the time you're thinking about radio communications, it's off the grid. So to actually provide radio communications within this huge 1 million acre park, we rely on solar quite a bit. So first we'll start off with talking about the Logan Pass Visitor Center. This is a place where, you know, I would say it's one of the most common park destinations, that and the Avalanche Lake Trail. So it gets a lot of visitor use. It is at the highest point of the Going to the Sun Road. There are 3,600 watts of solar panels in the area, which then provide the building with 100% of its electricity. And since the Logan Pass Visitor Center is only open in the summer, this really makes sense when we have the most sun input, the strongest, you know, sun, without, as Rachel said, no snow on the panels to block the efficiency of that. So this is a great use of solar here in this location. Again, another visitor center we have it's called the Apgar Visitor Center, and it's right out of West Glacier there when you're going through the west entrance to the park. And this was a building that actually not just has solar installed, which provides 100% of that building's electricity, but it is also LEED Gold certified. So when it was submitted into the LEED standard, it was in the top 16% of all projects for that year, meaning that basically it met a lot of the requirements that were measured. And one of the, just for an example, the way it's positioned, just where it's like located with it, the windows facing the different angles, it provides the, in the summertime, the most shade strategies possible so that you're not getting a lot of sun in and then increasing the heat in the building. And then in the winter, it's also positioned where there's the most sun coming in to actually kind of try to help heat the building. So it's really cool, just all the thought that went into this building. I mean, not just with solar, but everything to really maximize what our natural environment is doing for us. In addition, like there's daylight sensitive lighting. So if there's enough natural light, then you don't need the overhead lights like I'm sitting under right now. So it's pretty cool, and it's been kind of it's a source of pride, I think, for many of us here. And then we also are using solar at ranger stations. So for example, Goat Hunt, which is on the border of Canada and the United States, in order to get there with you can go hike a very long way through the park, or you can go around to Waterton and come down that way. And what the solar provides here is actually for the pavilion. There's a pavilion and a ranger station. And so the solar is providing electricity for the pavilion, which is only open in the summer. So again, really convenient use of this type of renewable energy when it works the best. And the solar is, that picture is kind of very hard to tell, but it's on top. So it's a rooftop installment. The Polebridge Ranger Station, which is up in the North Fork, which is the northwest part of the park, is still pretty, just like Goat Hunt, it's still pretty remote, not as remote, but pretty remote. And there was a use of solar with a ground installation, and that provides power there all year round, because we have rangers who do live and work out of there. And then just to move ahead, we have, like I said, the lookouts and radio communication where solar is used as well. All 4 staff lookouts have solar panels in order to power things like their refrigerators and the different radio communications used in order to communicate any fire sightings and check in every day. So that's a pretty cool thing, because these lookouts obviously are on the top of mountains, and so again, off the grid. And again, the radio transmitters, like I said earlier, we are using, there's 18 locations throughout the park where solar is used. And again, this makes the most sense because these places don't have any grid access. So not only is it practical, but it's a reliable, efficient, and it actually is really quite needed. So there are, as I've kind of been going along, and there are advantages of solar in Glacier, and I've kind of mentioned a little bit some of them already, but it doesn't require grid access. So having a lot of these functions that I just described is really, we couldn't have them without the solar, because there is no grid access to these places. And because the summer months really do have, a lot of sun, long days, it really has been cost effective and reliable during our peak visitation season. As far as reducing energy, it's obviously, as we know, contributing to a clean environment, and it's cutting down on electricity demand. And as I mentioned, just has a really good performance in the summertime. But just like everything, there are some challenges as well, and I think Rachel kind of alluded to those in her talk today. But with being so far north, so high latitude, we have a very low angle of incidence, meaning that basically the sun, instead of on the equator where it's just beating straight down and you're getting the most bang for your buck for solar, we're at a very slanted angle. And so we are not, you know, able to produce obviously as much effectiveness as if we were in the equator. Especially in the winter when we have very short days, limited, if you've ever been in the Flat Valley in the winter, you know there's not a lot of sun. So limited sun, short days, long winters, and again, that snow accumulation is gonna stop those panels from functioning efficiently and sometimes at all. So that is the challenges of solar and Glacier. I want to move on to hydroelectric. That's another one of our renewable energy sources. And just real briefly, I want to talk about the Goat Haunt Ranger Station. Now that again, we just talked about where Goat Haunt was, and we have the pavilion, which is powered by that solar, but then we also have a same thing, a micro hydro generator that's using the creek nearby to produce electricity for the ranger station. So both places up there are run by renewable energy. And then I want to just focus on the Hungry Horse Dam, which is not in Glacier. It's down the road out in Hungry Horse, which is, I don't know, 8-10 miles from the park. And it's basically all, you know, that provides electricity for the whole Flathead Valley, but also the Glacier National Park. So 98% of our electricity is coming from that dam. Now, again, I mean, when you think about dams, a lot of times there's pros and cons, right? So producing that renewable energy is great and it's cleaner, but it also really changes the whole river corridor, the whole system, and how fish and aquatic insects live. So there are very many people who don't really like dams in the West, but then there's these advantages as well. Now I wanted to point out though, there's something very cool happening at this particular dam. They are using what is called a selective withdrawal. And some of you probably know what selective withdrawal is, but just if you don't, I want to explain what that means is, in order to mimic how the river would naturally work and flow and how the critters in it would be able to respond to water temperatures, they're trying to withdraw from a certain area in the reservoir. So like in the summer, they're gonna move up the equipment to get the water from more of the middle of the reservoir to mimic the temperatures that you would see in the stream down below for fish and aquatic invertebrates to get the cues they need to do, you know, everything from spawning to, you know, insects hatching, those kinds of things. And then in the winter or at different times of the year, they'll move that equipment lower in the column to get a different temperature. So that's really cool because what it's doing is effectively helping the things that live downstream and mimic that natural environment. So that's pretty neat. And then that's kind of our main renewable sources. But like I said, we obviously do as much as we can to, in terms of non-renewables, to, you know, really minimize our carbon footprint. We have a new idling campaign that just came out that Jeremiah actually worked quite intensely on. And that is a campaign that is for visitors, staff, volunteers, our partners, just to, there's always road construction in parks in the summer, and we've had a lot on the Going Sun Road, so just turn off your vehicle when you're waiting, and you're gonna reduce a lot of what we're hearing and smelling and emitting into the atmosphere. So moving forward, it's really quite important to prioritize how, you know, keep prioritizing sustainability efforts, and also making sure we have a sustainability leader, whether that's a paid position or like we've been using interns, but somehow keep moving forward with that. And then as technology improves, well, there's already technology we can use that we don't have, but then as it improves, to invest in that. And also, fundraising is a big deal to getting many of these projects done. We can't do them a lot of times as the National Park Service for a variety of reasons, but we use one of the partners we focus quite a bit on to help us with fundraising efforts is the Glacier National Park Conservancy, which does a heck of a job funding for us for a variety of things. But one of the things they really do great is sustainability efforts. And so, for example, they are currently working on raising enough money for solar panels on our headquarters building, which would be fantastic. So really cool stuff going on there. And then just like the idling campaign, we've made, I don't have my sticker is stuck onto the wall here, but we have an idling, it says, be idle free, turn the key. And we are really trying to promote that. And it's just spreading the word, whether it's throughout the park, in our publications, on our website, rangers talking to folks, or you know, special programs like this. So thanks so much. That's all I have today.
Great. Thank you, Melissa. Melissa, if you want to stay unmuted, and I will find Rachel on the list and ask her to unmute too. We will go ahead and jump into our Q&A section here. So just a reminder for folks, if you do have a question, go ahead and submit it using the chat function. I did see we had a couple questions come in already, so I will go ahead and get started. Let's see, actually our first two questions are related. Would both of you maybe say a couple words about efforts to create more opportunities for electric vehicle charging stations in or around the parks? Melissa, maybe since you were just chatting, do you want to go first, and then we can go to Rachel?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so there are electric vehicle charging stations at Lake McDonald Lodge right now, and we've been trying very hard the last, gosh, it's been like 5 years, trying to get more charging stations throughout the park. That was another project Jeremiah just was working on while he was here. And we've got the electric vehicles that the park is going to use for campgrounds instead of, you know, just to get around. But the charging stations are ordered, and we're really close to installing them. But as we all mentioned, with the government can be some paperwork involved. So we're still trying to get those installed, but they are coming. And so, yes, we will have them soon.
Sorry, I muted you, Rachel. Sorry about that.
Good. So here at Yellowstone, it's kind of the same thing. Like, we are working and we're trying. We have some electric vehicles on our own fleet, but we currently don't have any stations set up for public use. And it's another thing where we're running into like compliance when it comes to historic districts. So pretty much all of Yellowstone, especially the visitor use areas, are historic. So if we're trying to install, like, for example, a Tesla charging station, which are big white red things, they don't comply with our historic guidelines. So it's just another little thing with like funding and working with the State Historic Preservation Office to work that out. And then we are going to be testing a self-driving shuttle, I believe, at Canyon for visitor use. So I think we're going to pilot that next year to try to cut down on traffic a little bit.
Nice. There's a joke in there about piloting versus unpiloting a self-driving vehicle, but I'll let it go. Let's see. In the next question we have, let's see, Melissa, I think this is for you. What is the campaign going to be like for the no idling work? Somebody's interested in just how the park is going to get the word out about that. I think it's a really good thing.
Yeah, so a variety of things that are done when we're trying to get our messaging out. There's kind of the standard, you do a press release, it goes out, it goes to all the different news agencies, and it gets picked up that way. We also have information that we can, I don't know if this has been done yet, but blurred out on social media outlets that we have, all of our different social media channels. We also can put it in our park publication, which is the Glacier Guide that you would get when you enter the park website, information there. Also, when you go to the visitor center is where you can get these stickers, and that's another way to promote. So those are a variety of things that, whenever you're doing any kind of media campaign, those would be all factors that you would do, and this is no different. So that's kind of what we're doing in that regard.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing. Yeah, definitely a robust amount of opportunities to share that information around. Let's see. Another question that came in is for Rachel. In Yellowstone, in the highly visited areas, how is that power typically generated? Does that come from a utility? Are there generators? Things like that.
Yeah. So most of our power is actually from Northwestern Energy. Throughout the whole park, I think down towards like Old Faithful, it might switch over to a different utility, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, most of it's from Northwestern.
Great. Yeah. Let's see, I don't see any other questions coming in, so maybe I'll make a last call for questions. I also will say, and I'm going to put this in the chat box here for everyone, you both talked a little bit about micro hydro, and of course you talked about solar as well and some other systems, but earlier this year we actually happened to do a video shoot with someone walking us through how micro hydro works, and we did kind of a how-to behind the scenes video. So the information I just sent out is a link to MREA's YouTube channel, where we have more information on micro hydro. Let's see, maybe we can use this as our last question. Of course, it starts with a thank you, as all of our questions did, and truly thank you both again. Can you talk a little bit about if there are any environmental considerations that you had to incorporate into system designs for maybe renewable energy systems, but maybe park systems in general, things like stormwater runoff, sensitive habitats, and things like that? I think you both kind of touched on national historic preservation issues, but what about any of the other environmental considerations? Rachel, maybe do you want to start?
Sure. So any project that we do in the park, we have to do an environmental impact survey. So, that's looking at everything. I'm not like an expert on it, but yeah, we look at, like for the micro hydro, we had to look at how much water is being diverted. Is there going to be any potential loss of water? Are there any like endangered species that are going to be impacted by it? So it's definitely can complicate the process, but it's something that's involved in every project in the park. So like right now we're doing a big housing project here in Yellowstone, where we're replacing pretty much all of the employee housing. So that involved a big environmental impact study. So it's definitely a big part of any project here.
Yeah, and I'll just add that compliance is something that we are by law mandated to do. So there's an environmental assessment called an EA, or environmental impact statement called EIS. Depends on the grandness of the project, so how big or what's involved. And we have a whole compliance team that works on every single thing that does occur in the park. And as Rachel mentioned, all different aspects need to be looked at, whether it's endangered species or, plant habitat, whatever it is, historic buildings, all of those things are looked at, and a cadre of folks will put input and comments into the EA or EIS before it's then moved on. there's many steps to the process, but that's generally kind of the basics of it. And that's how any land-based management agency needs to do these, and the Park Service is no different.
Great. Well, it looks like that's all the questions that we have for today. So I just want to give a huge thank you again to both of you, to Melissa and Rachel. Thank you for joining us, for sharing your expertise. I know personally, I love both Glacier and Yellowstone. I've visited multiple times, and it's really cool to learn about all the renewable energy going on in the park, especially with the challenges of being in such remote areas. You know, MREA's work talks so much about on-grid renewable energy and how to bring more renewables onto the grid, but you're in the exact opposite problem, which is how to deal with off-grid buildings. So thank you both so much.
Thanks so much for having.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you.
Great. So thank you again also to our sponsors, of course, and to everyone who joined us today, especially for sticking on the line so we could do some fun Q&A with our guest speakers. I want to remind everyone that next week our presentation will be on renewable energy plus the agriculture industry. We have a guest speaker who's going to talk about how solar and wind can pair with farming and ranching and pollinators, of course, which is always a big question. And that will be our second to last presentation. We're coming up on the close of the summer series. So thank you all again so much for joining. Thank you to Rachel and Melissa, and we hope to see you all again on another presentation next week.